Speaker for today is the Minister of Finance, Mr. Christos Staikouras. I think, last but not least, is the best way to describe Mr. Christos Staikouras. I'd like to thank him because despite the fact that there is a discussion on the budget in Parliament, he was in Parliament. He actually came here for a short while and then will go straight back to Parliament for the debate. I don't want to cause any delays. I want to thank him because he is a great interlocutor. He's always held very interesting discussions with ENE, the Hellenic Entrepreneurship Association, and our discussions are always fruitful. So welcome, Minister. You have the floor.
Thank you very much for this invitation. I'm going to be very open because I believe that I need to share with you some thoughts so that you know where we want to take the Greek economy, so that as businessmen you may embrace our plan and contribute to its implementation, because it does not suffice to implement responsible policies. The stakeholders of the economy must also move the same direction. The first thing I'd like to share with you is to clearly and frankly paint the picture of the Greek economy. The big picture tells us that we've made it, you've made it, and we've made it. You withstood the healthcare crisis, the health crisis, the successive crises that have taken place, and the Greek state has come to help entrepreneurship. The result seemed almost impossible a few years ago, a recovery. You see, I've chosen it seemed that the V-type recovery would have been impossible, but now it's proved that it is possible. It's been proved that it is possible. And now we've got the productive reconstruction of the economy. In other words, investments and exports are growing faster than consumption. We've managed something that was thought impossible a few months ago, to cut down on the unemployment rate, to have the highest unemployment reduction rate during the health crisis. We managed to implement a series of difficult structural changes and dare to deal with problematic assets that had costed more than 2 billion euro in Greece, like the Hellenic vehicles industry, and other assets. We've managed to increase over months industrial production. We've managed for the economic climate to have reached the level of the pre-pandemic level. We've managed the borrowing costs, the money markets to be still negative. We've managed in the capital markets our borrowing costs to be at historic low levels. We've managed for the Greek economy's competitiveness to be enhanced, and we've managed for the country to have been upgraded by 3 rating firms during the health crisis. This means that we have laid the foundation for a high and sustainable economic growth. Have we managed everything? Are there no risks? Of course there are, and actually serious risks. Only today, the snapshot of today, because I painted you the large picture, there are 2 in crisis: health crisis and energy crisis. But I know very well that the business community, or part of the business community, which relies heavily on electric power, will have to deal with high costs, including industry. So I'm not painting an idyllic picture. We know that Greece is the only country that is in enhanced supervision regime, and it's over surveillance regime, and it has gone, but it has got low financing costs as a percentage of the GDP. And also, it's not investment grade. The country is not an investment grade. So any decisions made in a monetary level will have an impact to the country. So we know, we recognize the risks, we recognize the challenges, we acknowledge the challenges, but we want to deal with them. And we intend to deal with them with a plan, with political will, with acumen and decisiveness. So, determination. So I assume what you want of me is that to have a plan, and that this plan has got policies and access for the targets to be achieved. And this is what I'm going to talk to you about. Our policies are aligned for 8 pillars. First pillar, the health crisis is not over. The support measures need to be withdrawn gradually, but not abruptly. And as we've agreed at a Eurogroup level, the return to normal will come with the gradual withdrawal of the measures. We can't leave households and businesses unassisted, unhelped. This is why for the 2022 budget, we've got additional measures worth 3.3 billion for the support of households in view of the health crisis. Second challenge, the energy crisis, an acute crisis, more acute than initially expected at European level, which has lasted more than expected at the European level, but which seems to be rather transient. Now, given the above, political leadership has to take the proper measures, appropriate measures, permanent measures to deal with a transient problem, temporary problem, but a one-off problems in order to deal with them. And we have got a set of measures amounting to 1.1 billion to deal with the effects of the energy crisis. And obviously, as long as the more the crisis goes on, the more the Greek government would be on the side of households and businesses. Third priority, continuation of a sober economic policy. If we had this discussion a couple of years ago, which we have had on numerous occasions with your association, you would have told me one thing: just cut down on tax rates, and we have done so, especially for businesses. Not only that, we keep on cutting down on tax rates, down to 22%, the corporate income tax. 22%, and when we assumed office, it was at a level of 29-28%. You talked to me about the advance payment, the tax advances, the contribution, solidarity contribution, and you talked to us about social security contributions as well. So we're going to move along this journey, sober, fiscal policy, because we're not investment grade, and towards further reductions of tax rates and insurance contributions, and fair distribution of wealth. Fourth pillar, also key, again, because we don't forget the challenges, smart, insightful bond issue policies. You've seen that in the past weeks, the borrowing cost has been increasing of the country more than on other occasions. This is true. We had expected this. We had expected this because any disturbance in the monetary policy would affect Greece, which is not is not an investment grade country. So we built a good cash buffer in a timely manner of the 39.5 million euro as a percentage of the highest buffer in Europe, in order to prove that we are able to deal with any crisis and monetary crisis. So, a sober fiscal policy and insightful issuing policy. And in the first half of the 2022, we're going to repay the IMF loans. They said, some wrote that this is a move of clout. Well, actually, it is a move to prove that we are improving the sustainability of the public debt. The front-loaded payment of GLF, the bilateral loans with the EU area member states, is another move to show that that will improve rather the sustainability of the debt, public of the sovereign debt. So these are clever moves at the same time as raising resources raising funds from international markets, showing that we have got targets and intentions for the day after. Fifth pillar, liquidity. Liquidity in real economy. There are no magic recipes. We are a bank-based country, so resources will be injected through the banking system. So as a state, what we need to do is to continue the implementation of Heracles. I don't know if you saw the data yesterday, non-performing loans. So NPLs amount to 20 billion when they used to be 75 billion, and 3 years ago they were 107 billion. It's not a matter of cutting down on private debt. There's been no write-off, but the assets of the banks have improved. So along with the increase in deposits and the decrease in their borrowing, led to better cash positions. At the same time, the OCW started being implemented for households and businesses. And why did we do that? Because for the first time ever, we want to deal with the private debt in a holistic manner. And the first settlements show that on specific terms and conditions, this is possible. And in 2022, along with services and banks, we're going to try and resolve this problem. After the settlement, the debt settlement, after the settlement has been honored, we're going to enlarge the perimeter of businesses that will be green more than red. So help bankable businesses. And then again, in terms of liquidity, and I'm talking this manner for you to have a clear picture, is to utilize this 12.5 billion euro of the development bank that has to do with loans, not grants. So we've already and concluded agreements with the EIB and EBRD in order to move in this direction. Sixth pillar, structural changes and denationalizations, privatizations. You know very well, and we have proved it, showcased how important these priorities are for us. So a series of privatizations will take place in 2022. The ports of Alexandroupoli, Goumenica, Kavala, Heraklion, marinas in Kalamaria, Lefkimi, in Corfu, structural changes and I'm only talking about the Ministry of Finance. Obviously, structural changes are deployed across the policy areas. Incentives for electronic transactions, digital transactions, enhancement of or incentivization of any green investments or and many other privatizations. Seventh pillar, active participation of the country, as we have been doing in the past 2 years at all levels, in European debates on the new European economic strategy. You know very well that the discussion has opened for changes in the Stability and Development Pact, and Greece is taking part in this discussion with specific proposals because we want fiscal stability but also flexibility that will depend on the economic cycle. We want that the primary result is not dependent on the the expenses that are made for European priorities, like green transition, and also other types of expenses in the past couple of years for European priorities regarding its defense. The migration expenses had been exempted, but there are also defense expenses. We are going to try and have flexibility in order to have the ownership of proposals submitted for the future and for restructuring and innovation. And also there is the RRF and its resources, the NSRF until 2027, and the Common Agriculture Policy, CAP. The sum amounts to 80 billion euro. This is a significant tool. We have already moved on with 48 projects with a budget of 2.76 billion euro, which will improve the quality of life of citizens with regard to R&D, healthcare, public services, climate crisis, energy infrastructure, justice, culture, and agri-food. So what have I shared with you so far? Actually, the 8 pillars upon which specific policies are based in order to achieve 6 targets. First target, high or fast economic growth. As of 2021, is it feasible? Totally. This year, the recovery is expected to be at least 6.9%. Next year, it's thought to be at least 4.5%. This is quite rare for the Greek Greek government to be more conservative than European institutions. The European institution actually says 5.2% for 2022, but it's best to be conservative, and all of us struggling for the best, trying for the best. Second target, high growth rate is not enough. We need sustainable growth rate as well in order for it to be sustainable. We need to change the production model, so more emphasis on production and exports. As of 2021, is it feasible? Yes, of course. According to the European Commission, Greece will be a champion in Europe in 2021 and 2022 in investments and exports. The average in exports will be 8% when the European average will be 0%, and investments 15 to 20% when the European average will be approximately 5%. Third target, for the country to exit the enhanced surveillance regime. And this is totally possible because as of January, we're going to start discussions as to how this is going to happen, but very carefully and cautiously, taking into account the developments at European level. Fourth priority, fourth targets, single digits NPLs in 2022 in bank portfolios. Bank portfolios in 2022, is it feasible? Totally. Let me tell you that at least 2 systemic banks will have single-digit percentage of NPLs as of this year, 2021, next week, the week after. Fifth target, fiscal adjustment in 2022, not stability. We believe that there's going to be a primary deficit in 2022, but fiscal adjustment and realistic surpluses as of 2023. And sixth target, which presupposes the achievement of the previous ones, investment grade by 2023, so as to deal with any future disturbances in the monetary policy. So, dear friends, I have shared with you the targets, the pillars, the policy pillars, specific policies, in order to try and persuade you to invest even more, because I would like to prove that this government works consistently with a plan, political will, and confidence, so that it can take the country to a high and sustainable growth rate and creation of many good quality new jobs and enhancement of social cohesion.